Hello, and welcome back to Humanity, Facts and Mysteries. We tend to assume hierarchy is natural, that as soon as humans gather in large numbers, power must concentrate, leaders emerge, inequality grows, and authority becomes visible. History seems to prove this pattern over and over again. But what if I told you there is a place where this logic simply doesn't apply? A place where thousands of people lived together for centuries without kings, without palaces, without streets, and without a centralized system of control. A settlement so large and stable it forces us to rethink what a city even is. This place is Çatalhöyük. Located in what is now central Turkey, Çatalhöyük was inhabited from roughly 9,000 to 7,500 years ago. At its peak, several thousand people lived there, making it one of the largest known Neolithic settlements in the entire world. Decades of archaeological work have revealed a city that defies almost every assumption we have about early urban life. First, there were no streets. Houses were built directly against one another, forming a dense, continuous honeycomb-like structure. How did people get around? They walked across the rooftops. To get inside your home, you'd climb down a ladder through an opening in the roof. This wasn't some temporary setup. It was the permanent design of the settlement for over 1,000 years. Next, there were no public buildings, no grand temples dominating the skyline, no administrative centers, no palaces. Every house followed roughly the same plan, and every household had access to similar resources. While some differences existed, they were subtle, not stark declarations of wealth or power. And that brings us to the most startling fact. There were no visible rulers. Burials were placed beneath the floors of houses, not in monumental tombs for a special elite. The items buried with them varied slightly, but not enough to suggest a rigid class system. No single individual stands out as a king, a high priest, or a powerful leader. If power existed here, it left no architectural trace. And yet, this society wasn't chaotic. It was incredibly organized and endured for centuries. Houses were meticulously rebuilt on the exact same spot, layer upon layer, creating the massive mound that archaeologists excavate today. This points to a deep sense of continuity, memory, and attachment to place. People didn't just drift through. They stayed, they rebuilt, and they created a stable community. So how did daily life work? It revolved around shared routines. Food preparation, tool making, and craft production all happened within individual households. But the striking similarity in house layouts suggests there were common standards and social expectations. Order wasn't imposed from the top down. It was woven into the very fabric of how people lived and how their space was structured. Even their spiritual life was different. It was integrated directly into the home. Stunning wall paintings, intricate installations, and symbolic arrangements of animal horns and bones are found inside ordinary houses, not in separate, exclusive temples. This suggests belief was something everyone participated in, not something administered by a special class of priests. What about gender roles? Archaeological studies of skeletons show that men and women had similar diets, performed similar physical labor, and experienced similar health patterns. Art from the site doesn't consistently privilege one gender over another. All the evidence points towards a remarkable degree of social parity. Economically, Çatalhöyük was surprisingly well connected. They used obsidian tools sourced from volcanic regions hundreds of kilometers away, proving they were part of long-distance exchange networks. But here's the key. This trade didn't create a wealthy merchant class or visible concentrations of riches. Resources circulated throughout the community without generating the kind of inequality we see elsewhere. Of course, life wasn't a perfect utopia. There is evidence of some interpersonal violence, but not of organized warfare. The settlement had no defensive walls, no weapons designed specifically for combat, and no mass graves. It wasn't a society built around conquest or defense. This all leads to the central fascinating question. How did such a large and complex community function for so long without any clear hierarchy? The answer seems to lie in a concept we could call scale without stratification. Instead of governing through command and control, Çatalhöyük relied on shared social norms, constant interaction, and the power of reputation. In a dense environment where you literally live on top of your neighbors, cooperation isn't an abstract ideal, it's a daily necessity. Power wasn't concentrated in one person. It was diffused throughout the community. Authority was likely situational. The person with the most skill in flint knapping might lead that activity, while someone with deep knowledge of ritual might guide a ceremony. Influence shifted depending on the context, and no one was able to accumulate enough power to dominate everyone else. For a very long time, this unique model worked, but it wasn't designed for endless expansion. As the population grew and the environment changed, the settlement eventually began to fragment. People moved away into smaller, more scattered communities. The societies that came later in the region adopted different principles, the principles of hierarchy, private property, and visible authority that we are more familiar with. Çatalhöyük wasn't destroyed in a great battle or catastrophe. It was simply left behind. Its social model didn't collapse. It just didn't scale up into the kind of world that followed, a world increasingly shaped by territorial control and formal leadership. And this is why Çatalhöyük matters so profoundly today. It is physical proof that hierarchy is not inevitable. It shows that large, complex communities can exist without centralized power, and that social order can emerge from shared life rather than being imposed from above. It demonstrates that deep inequality is not a mandatory prerequisite for civilization. The people of Çatalhöyük didn't build towering monuments to command our memory. They built quiet, functional systems that worked for them for over a millennium. And because they were so quiet, their incredible story remained hidden beneath the earth for thousands of years. They represent a lost model of human society. Not a myth, not a utopia, but a real, functioning community that chose balance over dominance. Their world may not have led directly to ours, but it proves that other paths were once possible. When we study them, we begin to see that the modern world isn't the only possible outcome of human history. It's just the one that happened to survive. If there's another ancient society whose unique way of life you think deserves a closer look, let me know in the comments below. We'll continue exploring the forgotten possibilities of the human past. Stay with humanity, facts and mysteries, because sometimes the deepest lessons of history are found where power chose not to leave its mark. Thanks for watching.